Alrighty, come on. There we go. So, a little bit on the scripting of this storyline. I kind of know where I'm going with it, but the trick is I have my inner editor is giving me a little bit of a trouble. Keeps saying like, no, that's not quite right. I'm not ready for this to go live. Not ready to go. Not ready to go. Like, you're never gonna be ready. The question is, can I get the story ready? Or not ready, but good enough that I can post it out there. So, roughing out of some of what I'm doing, I think I had when I made the Captain and Rita Ray Gunn's thrilling interplanetary adventure story concept for the board game that I was working on. I came up with the character. I came up with roughly what the universe is, and I was the part of me that was playing around with a chunk of that universe because I love when things fit together just right in a certain way. And so when I was building the Captain Rita Ray Gun thrilling interplanetary adventure universe, it's all fine for the story game to be Tavern Tales of the Adventures of Captain Rita Ray Gun. That's one thing. The game that I was building to be a more inclusive all around the universe with multiple players, you can't all be playing Captain Rita Ray Gun. So I'm like, okay, so I'm going to build a whole universe for these stories to take place in. And I kind of want there to be like an alliance of rocket captains or whatever. And I'm like, what would I name this? And that of all things has tripped me up over and over again playing with this entire universe. Because there's a part of me wants to name the organization Arch, A-R-C-H. Because then the enemies of the Arch organization are the arch enemies. And my brain has latched onto that and won't let go. So I have this idea of this organization called Arch, and I keep tripping over this thing because the way this story for this audio adventure that I'm working on is going to start out is you are a cadet in the Arch organization, and many of the captains and heroes and scientists from the organization are currently out on a series of missions that are top priority. And so the location that you're in is sort of like the central location right now, and they're undermanned. So you're manning one of the stations, and you get news of a big villain and the danger they're going to express. I don't want to spoil the story before I've created, but there's this big thing that you get the wind of, and there's no way to get the news to any of the captains or heroes or whatever. And so you have to figure out, like, you got to get to the location where the villain's supposed to be enacting the first step of their plan and figure out what you can do. And in order to get in there, you have to be able to figure out what the plan is based off of some clues. So that's one of the puzzles. Crack a combination lock, and that's one of the other puzzles. And then you have to sort of get a true or false situation resolved in one way or the other. And if you do all of that, you set up the situation so that you can be one of the ones that help facilitate the capture of this evil villain. If you get 2 of the 3, you manage to facilitate the capture. You're not the one directly confronting necessarily the villain, I don't think, at this stage. Maybe in a rewrite, maybe if I can work that out. Because the trick with doing these types of puzzle games with the 2-channel audio is there's not really a lot of space for, well, I might rethink that. I was going to say there's not a lot of space for combat rolls and dice rolls to figure out role-playing things, or you dodge and they fire, and you fire and they dodge. Like, that's a lot of variables to move around, and you can't really do that as well with the two-channel choice. And it's even more so than would first appear. Like, you could say like you attack and they attack, and if you aim high and they aim high, your beams intercept and you knock the gun out of the hand or something like that. You could set it up in a certain fashion like that, but you get one action. And with a two-channel like that, you either have a success or a failure. And then past that option, both of those channels have to lead to a common result. And by what I mean by that is, if you have, say, a fist fight, and they're getting ready to throw a punch, do you dodge and punch, or do you block and then go in for a punch afterwards? Let's pretend that one of those is the right choice and one of those is the wrong choice, and you make the choice of block and then punch. The problem is, you do a story where you're in that situation. Which do? You choose this one on the bottom. When you spell out the consequences of that action, you've blocked and then you've punched. But there's no option after that to split it off in a new direction. And the dodge and punch option as your second choice also comes to a point where it can't split anymore. So both of those are sort of dead ends. They have to remerge back into the main line or continue as two separate lines. And if you continue as two separate lines, eventually you're either going to have that be the end of the story, or you're going to have to remerge those two lines somewhere. That's just how it has to work for a two-channel audio game. And so it doesn't really make for the best combat or confrontation or role play aspects of the game. This is very much on rails. And by that I mean, like, this story has to lead you to make certain choices, and the choices you make don't really change the course of the story. They only allow you to accumulate items, prizes, or scores that at the end you're left to tally up and see if you've met the victory conditions. So at the start of any given game, it should be kind of clear that you don't have to do it at the start, but at some point in the game, it should be clear that in order to win, you have to get, a certain number, in this case, 2 out of 3 of the things achieved. So, are you going to find out the villain's master plan from the clues they have, and then, or find out where the villain's going from the clues they have, get into their secret communications device and discover their plan, and then 3, figure out where they are at a given time, catch them true or false, and let the Rocketeers know what's going on so that they can intercept the villain. I mean, that sort of thing is sort of where I'm going with this. And those are clues that you can accumulate. You can be victorious by knowing where they're going, what their plan is, and where they can be intercepted. Or you can get them with their plan and where they're going to execute their plan, or where they're going to execute their plan and where you can intercept them. But you can't get away with just knowing what their plan is, but not knowing where they're going to do it or how to stop them in the meantime. So there's structuring it in such a way that you have to accumulate 2 of the 3 in order to get the victory situation. That's sort of like the best case scenario for the current 2-channel model. I am sort of contemplating seeing if I can figure out. I know there's some things you can do as audio tricks. I know like karaoke devices sometimes have a thing where you can actually filter out one level of sound off of a recording and pick and choose where your sounds are. And if you could build a small circuit board that would do that with the left and right button option and the central button, central channel option, I guess, then I could make a game with more than a left and right channel. I could probably do a 3 or 4 if I can figure out if there's a way to do that with a simple MP3 or other audio recording file. Because the moment we open up more than 2 channels to do that with, like stereo channel is both left and right, and then the mono channels are left or right. I don't have an option for if I had the option for a stereo channel, left, alto and up, left, tenor and down, and then right, alto and up, and right, tenor and down. If I have a device that can clip those things out and give you only one of those 4 channels, then it immediately becomes possible to do a lot more with this. And that would be really fun to explore, to see what I could do with an MP3 file, maybe even YouTube videos. I don't know what YouTube video channel possibilities would do, because I think some of the compression really would make it hard to do some of that way. But I'm okay with it if it's not a YouTubeable game, as long as there's a way to do it, to split an audio track into 3 to 5 channels. I think I could do a bit with that. And it would make it possible to do a more broadly interesting choose your own adventure style game. Because the toy that I was originally building some of these designs off of, I guess it's the XLT or XLR robot from the late 80s, early 90s, I think. That one was based off of, and I'd love to crack open one of those things and see what they did. I might see if I can borrow my friend's old one that he had in storage and used for his son. But I'd love to see, like, I'd have to hunt down, because I don't think my friend has one of these tapes, but they made some choose your own adventure, like X-Men stories and stuff like that you could play on this device, and it only has the 3 or 4 buttons for choices on it. And I'd have to see like how they formulated. And now, conceivably, what they ended up doing was a very simplified choose your own adventure. But even the option of the 3 different directions you can do with that was, I mean, they had 4 channels they could work with. They had left and right side A and left and right side B, and they used them all as a one-sided tape. So they used 4 channels for that. If I can get 4 workable channels of audio to use, then I can do what those types of games used. Now, I'd have to track down a couple of their copies of them to really get a sense for how they structured their storytelling to maximize the potential usage of it. And they did have a board game that you could also play. So it was a board that would fit over the device that played the tapes. And there was gameplay involved with it. And I think there's potential if I can figure out how to get 4 channels of audio. I think I can do this. I'm almost positive that I could do something useful with this. I don't know how much of it's, like I said, I don't know how much of it's usable on YouTube. I mean, it won't be as easy as these first ones that I do. The Halloween one and the I might want to think of a new title for this first prototype game, because currently I'm calling it the Space Cadet. So the Space Cadet game, it's being configured because there are no external devices to use with it. You're just using like a set of earbuds or headphones of some kind that you can remove one from one ear at a time. And that's the simplified version of what you can do with it. And until I come up with an external device that gives me more options on that, I think we're going to stick with the 2 channels. Now, this version is a very straightforward one, where it's a story where you have 3 individual puzzles, which you will get either a victory or a fail on, and it's sort of scorekeeping for the end. I do think I could possibly do a short trivia video as well, where I pose a can you figure out what the correct information is, and essentially set it up as true or false, or multiple choice with only 2 choices. And those would be reasonably decent. Like the trivia one is trivial. It's a pretty simple format to do. And I think there's an equivalent challenge that you can see some YouTubers are doing, where I think I saw one on, I think the Fine Brothers Entertainment did a video recently where they did a, do they succeed or do they fail? And there are people in the middle of doing something and you're like, ooh, they might not make it through this. There was one where it was a bunch of kids and there were these water displays that sprayed these arcs of water in a tunnel, but the arcs of water start to droop and they get smaller and then shut off and then turn back on. And these kids ran all the way down the tunnel and they go, oh, let's turn around and run all the way back. And they start running back and the tunnel starts to collapse. About halfway through, they stop the video and they ask you, so do you think they make it or not? And everybody's like, I don't know. Like, and they make their guesses and you turn the video back on and you see whether or not they made it. And were you wrong? But there's also a way to do it so that you're doing scorekeeping. So you and a friend can play together and you can disagree. You can have different choices and you can make the choice and it'll tell you both which choice is the right choice of the choices you were given. And then at the end, you can compare your scores and see how you did. Now, the other aspect of these sorts of audio games that I figured out early on was there's not a lot of replayability to these games. Like once you've played through it, anything you got wrong, you got wrong. So the next time you play the game, you just go the other way. And so it's not a lot of replayability for it. But I feel like some types of game or story that I can construct with it, I could conceivably set it up so that one choice does a certain type of scene. And in this sense, it's still a collecting story. It's where you're collecting the outcomes. So the outcome of, say, you could do I guess it's like a, I hesitate to use something cheesy like a dating simulation, but like one encounter is like you're going to go to dinner and a movie with one of two girls. And so you set up the story so that you pick one of the girls, and then the rest of the story doesn't name her or give any particular detail. So you're just going to assume the one you chose is the one that continues to be the one in the rest of the story. And then, so like the start of the story, choosing the situation you're going to be in, doing the narration of that first choice and encounter and whatnot. The other path would give you a different start. And so you'd have a different feel for the story. And then each of those characters later has the what movie you're going to see and what you're going to have for dinner. And so you have essentially, what is it? If you do 3 choices, you have something on the order of like 12 outcomes, essentially, I think. As long as like the outcomes of individual choices don't affect the choices later on. They affect how the story spells out in the long run. And yeah, actually, it might be. It's the math on it's tricky. I'm not able to visualize the map of it. So you have your split choices. You have 2 choices, and each of those gets 2 choices off the next round, and that's 4. And each of those gets 2 choices off the back end. And so that's probably about 8, maybe. So you can sort of like, can you collect all 8 stories essentially? If you construct the story right to do it that way. It's very easy to not construct the right story and just do does this happen left or right? Next section, does this happen left or right? So that it's not a continuous story. They're little blips. And that's easy enough to do. That's why I like the trivia and stuff like that is easier to do. I have, since probably earlier in this week, had an idea for flipping this kind of thing on its head. There was a conversation. I tried to explain to people what I was doing with this type of game design. And they weren't seeming to get it as an audio game. And I said, like, have you ever seen some of those puzzles or tricks where you have this scrambled looking image that's a combination of blue and red, and you have 2 different colored films, and if you put the blue one over it, it makes the blue color disappear and only the red appear. And if you put the red film over, it makes the red color disappear and only the blue film show up. Well, it'd be very easy to make a pair of blue and red 3D glasses, make a video where you get a sort of a 3D display, and then set it up so that there might not be any audio clues, or you could set some simple audio clues that'll be the same for both, but set it up that you come to a choice you have to make, and you close one eye, and you get a different result depending on which eye you close, because we drop away we drop away one side of the visual. So a red lens will cut out all the red images and leave you with only the blue. And like, I could build some video games that way. I don't know that we call them. I think we can call those interactive. I'm kind of curious if I could build them into a GIF. I don't know how long you can run a GIF before it's too long for the GIF. Or if you pronounce it GIF, I don't care. But that could be kind of a fun little thing to do with very simple file formats. Might even be able to do it as a slideshow. Wonder. A couple things I could do with that. But in the long run, that's sort of where, that's another thing down the road that I can play with. I'm not jumping on that one just yet. But I do think I would love to get 4 channels of audio. And I know there's got to be a way to do it. Because I know I've seen some stuff that lets you tweak audio from a source, like a song or a video, and just pull out certain parts of it. Once you've got that figured out and you know how to do it, you can construct it. You can construct your audio files in such a way that it'll extract only the one you want out of the ones you have. But for right now, I think instead of calling it Space Cadet, well, I don't know. What do you think? Should I call this one Space Cadet just because it's enough of a goofy name to catch attention? Or should I call it something more like Arch Cadet? A.R.C.H.Cadet. Story game or something like that. I mean, I feel like I could do that. But if I did that, that becomes less optimized to be found for people to play with. And then I have to count more on my spreading it around, letting friends and communities that I'm a member of participate in checking it out. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. Not sure what the right path for the naming of it is. But other than that, I think just getting the narrated portion down right and figuring, actually, as much as I was bouncing my head off of naming the organization right, I can just call it Arch and just leave the story of how it got its name to another point. So I won't sit here and dwell on it too much longer. But the Arch Space Cadet, I don't know. Story. The puzzles are figured out. The arrangement of events are pretty much figured out. The characters are figured out. I still kind of have to figure out the names. Like, I got the character figured out. I just don't know what names to give them. Like the villain, Baron something or other thingamabob. I mean, I can always have Captain Rita Raygun be part of the communications they get from the Arch community out on their special missions. And I want there to be another cadet at the location that you're starting out as that you can report back to so they can get the information to the rest of the Alliance. And so I got to name 2 cadets and a villain. And the puzzles are sort of contingent on where they're going to end up in the solar system. So, like, where are they going? What are they going to do in that location? And where you're going to intercept them. Those are 3 kind of aspects that are based off of story elements. And then I just got to do the narration of it. I got to script it well enough to sound good as a game. I don't know if I'll get it great, but at this point, good enough to be. That's the other thing is, what is the phrase? Perfection is the enemy of done. You know, you can get it done, or you can work on it trying to make it perfect, and you'll never get there. It's better to aim for done than perfect. So I need to aim for done. That's sort of where we are right now. Got a little bit of other stuff on my plate lately, so it's definitely slowing the amount of time I'm devoting to this project. But I want to have something done by the end of this week so that I can share it with other people and get some excitement for the project going, so that when Halloween time comes, I can share my Halloween adventure story, which I'm building a little bit more around a premise that I think does better at using the versatility in the 2-channel option. It has a little bit of a hack to work better. So we're at about half an hour in. We're a little over half an hour. I think I'm going to call it here. I still have to do my review of a board game, and tomorrow is the creative prompts inspired by the board game, and hopefully a finished version, well, at least able to talk about the finished version of the Space Cadet audio game that people could play. And then after that, I will tinker a little bit more with the system. But so this is an audio week. Next week is a video game week. All right? Yeah, it's art and audio, I guess is what we'll call it. It's supposed to be music, but I'm still not skilled enough in music to be making a lot of music yet. I'm playing with it a little bit, but I don't think I'll ever do really good quality stuff yet. But we'll see. We'll see where I get with that. All right. Thanks for joining me. Take care and have a good night. See you tomorrow. Did it work? There we go. And are you going to cooperate with me tonight? There we go.